So welcome, everybody, not so many. I'd like to talk about our experiences with the Google Summer of Code program. My name is Henrik Rentz-Reichert from the Protos company, and we founded the eTrice project. It's not so relevant here because I will not talk about the project itself, but rather about the Google Summer of Code and, well, what we did this summer. So just to give a short outline, I start introducing the Google Summer of Code program for everybody who hasn't heard about that. I'll give you a timeline, how that project works, and then talk about the project proposals we made and the student applications we had then in the after that, and about my experiences mentoring students, some words about intellectual properties, and yes, finally I'll talk about the lessons I've learned or we've learned, and I think there will be also some time for questions. The Google Summer of Code, I have to admit that I have heard about this program only this year in March, when Wayne Beaton from the Eclipse Foundation announced that in the committers mailing list, I think. And then I read about the program, and we decided in the project that it would be interesting to join that program. So what is this program about? It's Google sponsors or funds students all over the world. Everybody can apply who is a student, and the student is working roughly 3 months for an open source project. And he will receive, if he is accepted, he will receive $4,500 US from Google. And also the open source organization is receiving money from Google, which is an amount of $500. Just to give you some statistic for the last year, the current numbers aren't out yet. So the coding day in the previous year was from May to August. It was a 7.2 million budget, 1,100 students accepted, the double amount of mentors and co-mentors, and 175 open source organizations took part. Amazing number. I didn't know there are so many even. And there were students accepted from 68 countries and mentors from 55. And yes, there's a fifth of the students has already participated in previous years. So there's some fraction which did that for the second or even third time. And the overall success rate is 88%, which is pretty good. So most of the students were able to finish their project successfully. So now to the timeline. This year, the program was announced in February. I heard from it only in March. But at this point, the mentoring organizations already applied, and Eclipse, I forgot to look up the numbers. I think Eclipse Foundation joined this program in the fifth year in a row. So Eclipse already applied. The Eclipse Foundation already applied as an organization. And then end of March, the official student application period started. Then the mentoring organizations do a review their student proposals. So with Eclipse, it was like a dozen, I think, student proposals, and the mentoring organization does a ranking. So all people who who are mentors. So yes, first you apply as a mentor for your organization, and then we mentors from the Eclipse Foundation, we did an internal ranking of the proposals which addressed Eclipse projects. And then 23rd of April, the accepted student proposals are announced by Google. So I forgot to mention, Google allocates then a number of slots to each organizations, and the organizations decides how to distribute those slots to students. After all that, when Google announces the student proposals that are accepted, then the official coding phase begins end of May. Before that, this is a phase of getting acquainted with each other and starting to study the project and so on. Then in July, there was a midterm evaluation, and students receive a first payment. Well, I think even that it's already a second payment. And if everything runs fine, it's the end of the program was 24th of August with a final evaluation. So how about the project proposals? There are several ways to do that. Students can come up with ideas of their own, of course. They can study bacillars and make a proposal from one of those bacillars. And the third possibility was there was a wiki page which collected Google Summer of Code ideas, and we decided to bring in a couple of ideas in this wiki page, and so we announced four project ideas there with a small description. And finally, we had 5 applications for our 4 ideas, and we've been quite amazed about this because we didn't reckon with such an interest in this project. And then we decided to reject this one application, which was a double, because we said first come, first serve. And we had discussions with the students about the project, and we convinced ourselves that all of the students understood pretty well what is to be done and what we expect from them. Yes, and one of the ideas was with a framework which was developed at the University of Kiel, and so I tried to get a co-mentor from the university, which also worked. So finally, we had, or then at this point, we had still 4 students, and I thought we probably won't be able to mentor them in an adequate way, because we have already been aware that we had to put in quite some time for mentoring. So we finally decided to drop 1 student, and there was 3 students left, and we have been allocated slots by Google for each of those. So finally, we had 3 students doing projects for us. So now the mentoring job, I think it's probably you can say it's like 5 hours per student per week you have to afford. So it's well, yeah, it's quite some time, and for the 3 students, well, 2.5 actually, because I had this co-mentor. I think I put in between 10 and 15 hours per week, which is quite a lot. The communication channels were Gerrit code reviews, which we joined for this purpose, and we had very good experiences with that. I will say a few words about that on the next slide. Then by private email, I think that was my favorite medium. Then Skype chat we did sometimes, and Skype calls, especially with one of the students. My opinion was that was very time-consuming compared to emails. I preferred emails. So and finally, the eTrice development mailing list, but that had a subordinate role. It wasn't very important. And one challenge was to find a balance between control and self-responsibility. So the challenge was to find out when the student really needs support. Does he show up and say I need some support, I cannot solve this or that problem, or does he wait for me to ask him? So that was kind of difficult to find out, and it was different from student to student also. As I said, I wanted to say some words. Who does know Gerrit? Maybe I can skip that. You know Gerrit? Code review system. So I probably then just skip over that. Some words about intellectual property issues. That was something I had to, our project is not so old. We started 2 years ago, and we haven't had major contributions yet, so I had to read all this IP-related stuff and what is a contribution questionnaire and so on. And I had a discussion because one of the projects was sort of overlapping, so I expected to integrate some part of the code in an early stage and then add some things that I did as a committer, and then let the student complete that. And so I discussed with the IP team of Eclipse, and we found a nice solution, which was like the parallel IP process. So I could open this CQ, and it was in general agreed, and so we could go on, and I could merge changes from Gerrit into the project, and this before closing officially the CQ. So the CQ was closed later or approved later. Then one point is, of course, the committer or the mentor has to make sure that file headers are present, and about HTMLs and so on has to be in place. And the student finally has to make a statement that he is the author of the code he contributes to the project, and that he has the right to contribute the code. That's a standard for every contribution, so this is important. Well, the lessons learned. I think our first decision when we had 2 applications for one project, that we dropped the second one. I wouldn't do that again. I would let the students compete for project proposals and see who seems to fit better for that. Then I probably would ask the student more about previous experiences. We just relied on what we heard about their project ideas when they, the idea was from us, but the student had to tell his understanding of the project idea, and that has been sufficient for us. But I think in the future I would ask the student to tell more about previous experiences to be able to decide whether he's probably able to do the project. Then probably, yes, make sure the student is able to put in enough time. It turned out that some students had university classes running, and it was, at least in a part of the time, it was in conflict, because the Google Summer of Code is meant to be a full-time job, so the students should put in a full week, and this wasn't possible for every student. And then of course, it's important that you don't depend on project success. So you have always to be aware that projects can fail for whatever reason. Then the mentor has to be responsive. That's important. I didn't really think about that when I agreed to mentor that. In braces, I wrote vacation planning because it's running over the summer. It doesn't make sense to go away for a vacation and leave the students alone. So you should think about that, whether there's somebody who can take that job in your absence, if you are absent. Well, then our initial expectation was the students make a contribution for free, so that's good for our project. But we didn't really take into account the effort for mentoring the student. So it turned out that the effort for mentoring the student is roughly comparable to what we had to put in to achieve the goals by ourselves. So we realized that the real benefit is that it's, on one hand, it was a real pleasure for me to do this mentoring job and help the students get into the technology and reach this goal. And the second one is the possibility that we get future co-workers, contributors, committers even maybe. I cannot say whether this worked in our case. I think two students are inclined to continue to work for our project, but it's too early to say whether that promise will hold. Yes, that's what I wanted to tell you. Thank you for your attention, and if there's questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So you were not from a university, but a normal company?
We are a normal company, and we are running a project under the Eclipse Foundation. It's a modeling project, modeling tools project to be more specific.
So you didn't know the students before?
No, not at all. Two of them were Indians, and one was from Singapore. So maybe that's another challenge, to bridge the time gap and the cultural gap is also not so easy.
You didn't have any experiences with students before?
Yes, from my university time, when I did my PhD thesis, I had to mentor students also. But that's different. There were German students, and we met in person, so it's different to do that over a long distance with people you haven't ever met in. But it worked quite fine, I think. Everybody was happy.
And they got paid?
Yes, sure. Yeah, it's very simple and informal. What Google does is they have a sort of a questionnaire in the midterm evaluation and the final evaluation, and you have to answer like a dozen of questions, say, but finally it's only you say it's good or it's not good, and that's it. So there's no formal criteria. It's just when the mentor says it's all right, it's passed. Okay, thank you.